Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. In this video, I'm going to create some cards using these Cloud 9 interference inks. And I swear these things should be called magic ink pads because I have black stays onto some cardstock on the right hand side of each of these cardstocks and white. And these inks react differently on the different backgrounds. And I love the fact that you can get two separate looks out of one ink pad. Now, if you look at the front of the ink pad, the left-hand side shows you what it's going to be on white cardstock, and the right-hand side shows you what it's going to be on black cardstock. And I did these swatches here with these colors. These are the only 4 pads that I have, but I'm pretty sure I need all of them now. So that first color that I was using was Galaxy Dream. The second one is Warm Chestnut. The third one is Teal Twist, and the fourth one is Pink Champagne. And that's going from left to right of the pads that you see on my screen. I'll have them listed and linked in the description below as well. So I decided I wanted to create some holiday themed card. I'm using this tree stamp. It's a watercolor. It's meant to do a full watercolor look with, but I thought it would be kind of cool if I did some black ink on the center of the stamp and no ink on the outside of the stamp, so that when I went to stamp over it with these interference inks, I'd get both colors. I wanted to try to create some cards where I took advantage of both colors, and I didn't necessarily want to only be using black cardstock or white cardstock. So after thinking about it for a while, this is what I came up with. So I'm doing 4 cards. I'm doing one with each of the ink pads that I have. I'm just using some black distress ink and stamping it in the center or inking it in the center of the stamp, and then just using an ink blending brush to brush that out or blend that out. I don't want any harsh lines here. I did it all once and then I decided I wanted to go back and do it a second time. So I really had some nice black in that center of that tree and nothing on the side of the tree. Now, because there's nothing on the side of the tree, when I go and stamp it with these interference ink pads, that's going to be white cardstock. So I'm going to be able to see what these inks do on both colors on this one image. So it's going to have the image or the ink pad on the black in the center of the tree and on white on the outside of the tree, if that makes sense. So by doing it twice, I just really darkened the black on the center there. I'm not worried too much about having each one of those cards perfect or each one of the trees perfect. Like, it doesn't have to be inked in exactly the same way for every single one of them. But I did want to make sure that I didn't have any harsh lines in there. I wanted a nice gradual blend from the dark to the light. Using the Misti is the perfect tool for this because I don't have to worry about my stamp being in the wrong position. By making sure that my cardstock is in the bottom left corner of the stamping tool, anytime I stamp, that stamp is going to be positioned exactly and it's going to be positioned perfectly. So for doing a technique like this, I highly recommend some sort of stamp positioning tool. This one is my favorite right now. I love the fact that I have magnets there that can hold it in place so I don't have my cardstock shifting on me. And I know that I'm going to get a nice clear stamped image. And I know I can take that paper out and then put it right back in, know exactly where it's positioned, and restamp it. So now I'm done my base layer for these cards. I'm taking a baby wipe here and I'm just quickly cleaning my stamp. I want to make sure that I have a clean surface to work on with my stamp for each and every one of these. I don't want to be blending these inks together. So the first one I'm stamping with here is the Pink Champagne. This one I think might be my favorite. These pads are brand new. I just got them and they're super, super juicy. So they've got lots of ink there, but I love the hot pink that shows up with the white cardstock with this. When you look at the card right on, it looks like the tree is black with pink tips, but when you tilt it a little bit, you see that mica, that interference property that this ink pad has, and then you get to see the other color. So the second one here that I'm using is Teal Twist, and this one I think might be my second favorite. I love that teal color, and I love that it goes from the pink to the teal color. It's really quite beautiful. I think there's 24 colors or 24 ink pad choices total for this. So there's a lot of different color combinations to choose from. And for these techniques, the Galaxy Dream, the last one I'm going to be using, is the one that doesn't show a difference between the two quite as much as the first two. So the third one here I'm using is the Warm Chestnut. It goes kind of from a navy to almost a burgundy color. It's another beautiful one. I love the fact that there's so many different color combination choices with this, so you can really customize it to your color preferences. That last one there is the Galaxy Dream. Now, the one thing about the interference is I find that it shows up better once the inks have completely dried on the cardstock. And if you looked at the stamp that I showed you there, it comes off super clean. They come off really, really easily off the stamp. I didn't even need to use any special cleaner. I wiped it off with my baby wipe, and then I just ran it under a tap of water. So it washes off with water. You don't need anything in particular, anything special. So for each one of these colors, I'm using a white cardstock scrap as well as a black cardstock scrap to ink. And then I'm using a piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch black cardstock. And I'm going to use that for the mat around the image. I want to make sure that I have a lot of these ink colors on here. And by using that black cardstock and inking around it with that same ink pad, it's going to match perfectly, and it's really going to highlight the interference properties of this stamp pad. So I'm going to do that with each and every one of those colors. I am letting them dry. It does take a little bit for these ink pads to dry. They are so juicy, like I said before, as well as the fact that the interference really shows up as it's drying. And I don't want to be playing around and trying to layer my cards when the ink is still a little bit wet. I did the rest of the cardstock inking off screen. So for the sentiments for this set, I'm going to use this new Spellbinders Christmas die and glimmer set. Or it's new to me. I don't know if it's been around for a while. I've just gotten it. I didn't want to use my glimmer machine with these cards though. The cardstock scraps that I was inking isn't really glimmer friendly cardstock. I think it's too rough and I don't think I'd get a clear image. So instead I wanted to use my tiny text stamp set. This is the Christmas version, and I only wanted the word Christmas, so I'm only inking the word Christmas with Versamark ink, and then I'm embossing it with white embossing powder. I also wanted the dimension that you get with embossing with these cards, and I wanted the nice bright white on top of that inked background. Now, after laying it down, I realized that I hadn't inked quite enough, so I took all of my pieces of cardstock and I inked the ends that I hadn't previously inked. But I'm going to do that for all of them after I've stamped and embossed that word. So I am trying to pay attention to where I'm embossing that word, because I only have a little bit of, or a certain amount of property, real estate to work with here. Now, the neat thing about this sentiment die set is the first word not only has the shadow that goes over both of them, but it also has an additional layer on there, and it's really quite fine. So I'm die cutting those pieces with the inked black cardstock and then doing the layer or the shadow with the inked white cardstock. And the inked white cardstock is the one that I'm also doing the stamped and embossed Christmas word on it. Now, for the first one that I die cut, I wasn't really paying attention to where the word Christmas was. And by saying that, I just wanted to make sure that my word Merry was not covering it. And I thought it was closer than it was. So there's quite a bit of space. There's about a 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch space between the word Merry and Christmas. It still totally looks fine. I didn't think it looked bad enough to have to redo it, but for the rest of them I am making it a little bit closer and making sure that there's less of a space between the word Merry and the word Christmas. And then once it's stamped, cut, and die cut, I do take my scissors and I just snip off the extra so I don't have a big space at the end of it there. The one thing that you want to make sure of, I'm using die tape to hold it in place while I'm die cutting, but you want to make sure to die or to put that die tape where you're not going to, something you're not going to keep. That die tape does take off some of that interference ink pigment part, so it doesn't have that shine to it. So you don't want to be putting that die tape over top of the piece that you're wanting to put on the front of the card, if that makes sense. Put it on something that you're going to be tossing away. Put it on the outside of the die so that you don't have that mark on your die cut that you're going to be using on the front of the card. Once I have all of my pieces die cut, I am taking the layers for the card and I'm layering them together. I'm just using some Distress Collage Medium here. I like it because it's a liquid glue. I have room to shimmy things in place, and it dries completely clear and it dries completely matte. For the sentiment, for the Merry sentiment, because it's so fine and intricate, I'm using my tweezers here to hold the die cut so that I can place it properly before laying it down. I also want to make sure that my fingers aren't in the way. I think this is going to be perfect for the front of the card because it really shows up the ink color on the white, and it really is a nice pop of color here. So I've got that there. I'm gluing it to the front of the card. Anytime I have something glued down, I stick my acrylic block on top of there to hold it in place while I'm doing the rest of it. Here's where I started using that Christmas word a little bit closer to the word Merry, and just snipped off the end. Now, I love the cards as they are, but I wanted there to be a little bit more dimension to them. So I'm taking some Glossy Accents and I'm creating just some dots on the tree background. And the cool thing that happens, especially, you'd notice it especially with the pink champagne color, a little bit with the Teal Twist. Some of the darker colors, you don't notice it quite as much, but you see some of that dye part of the ink pad coming through. And it also adds a little bit of a different texture as well as some dimension. So I really loved how that worked. I was only going to do it on 2 of them, and in the end I decided to do it on all 4 of them because I actually really liked how it worked. From some of my extra white inked scraps, I die cut the star, and this is a star from that Danicin Snowman die set. I've used it previously in a video a couple weeks ago, and I just die cut my scraps. I just kind of thought that that tree would look really nice with a star on it, and I didn't want anything that was really big and that took away from the whole design. I wanted something very tiny, but I just wanted it to be there. So once I had that glued on, I also put some Glossy Accents on that just to give it a little bit of shine and dimension. And here's where I went back and did the other 2 cards with that. Now, if you've never used Glossy Accents before, when you first put it down, it's got kind of a milky white haze to it. As it dries, it goes completely clear. And you do want to make sure to let it dry completely. For these, for the size that I used, I let them dry for a good hour. And personally, because I'm a little bit of a klutz, I like to leave the room while those are drying, because I'm the type of person that will be the first place I put something else. I won't be paying attention. So if you are still crafting while these are drying, either put them out of your reach or in a safe place so that you don't accidentally do what I tend to do. But it's a great way to add just some texture, some dimension, and some gloss because it has a really nice glossy finish to it. Now for this particular project, I wanted to create a design where I highlighted both the colors that each one of these pads could do. You could easily not do that. You could just do the stamp over the black and have the iridescent properties showing, or you could just stamp it on white and just have the dye-based properties showing with a little bit of the interference showing when you tilt it in the light. It's your choice, and I love the fact that you have the freedom to do both. I think these inks would also be fantastic stenciled. I've seen where they're used with embossing folders as well, so I can't wait to try that. I definitely feel like I need so many more of them. These are just magical. I love interference things, and like I said, I need more. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you being here. Have a fabulous day.